Very good evening to you and welcome to Monday's programme.
Good evening. First tonight, a pledge from the government to build thousands of homes and create thousands of jobs in the East Midlands. David Cameron says it will help to get the economy moving.
One idea is to turn over public land to developers on a build now, pay later basis. Well, let's join our reporter Mike O'Sullivan for more on this story. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, Dominic. This is the former Cotgrave pit site in Nottinghamshire, disused since the early 1990s, public land owned by the government. Now the government is saying this sort of site could become one of the first build now, pay later sites in which developers pay for the whole thing after the last house is sold. Well, the government is planning a huge shake-up of the way housing is planned and pushed through, and that could have big knock-on effects throughout the East Midlands. These homes on the edge of Derby have turned Heatherton into a desirable suburb. But plans to make the estate even bigger are causing controversy, something that's never far away from big housing projects. This is the edge of Heatherton and there are plans to build 800 homes out here. Will it be a blot on the landscape or a much-needed boost for the construction industry, providing much-needed homes?
It's a bad idea because then you're going to get rid of all the fields and it's nice to walk your dogs there.
People need work, don't they? People need work and people need housing, so it's probably a good idea.
If it's going to make jobs for people, then with the economy as it is, then I think it's a good idea.
There's now likely to be a new round of argument over house building. The old master plan is being ripped up. Under the Labour government, there were targets for house building in our region, getting on for around 230,000 new homes over 20 years. For example, more than 93,000 in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, and around 80,000 in Leicester and Leicestershire, detailed right down to 3,000 homes in Rutland. But all those figures are due to be scrapped by the coalition government, who say housing targets just don't work. The government's latest promise to get house building back on its feet again is the news this building firm from Eakring in Nottinghamshire wanted to hear. The firm pulled out of large-scale house building in 2008 because the market was so poor.
We've had cutbacks in terms of the running costs of the business as well as staffing. Those measures were hard to take, but by taking them we've managed to keep the 37 jobs safe, keep the company in a good shape to get through in tighter times, and hopefully we'll be in a shape to take advantage of the markets when they pick up again.
One of the coalition's new ideas could help housing development on the former Cotgrave pit site in Nottinghamshire. Build now, pay later could help developers hit by cash flow problems.
Mike, under this scheme, of course, new houses would likely be built not only at Cotgrave but right across the East Midlands. I would imagine the campaign to protect rural England would have something to say about that.
That's right, Dominic. They've cautiously welcomed the initiative tonight. They're saying that it could be an example of sort of brownfield sites like this being brought into use, and they also say that affordable housing would be important on these sites, as would good transport links. But at the moment, it looks like it looks like a bit of a windswept scene from a spaghetti western. A lot of work to get things moving here and on those other sites across the East Midlands with this government shake-up. OK, Mike O'Sullivan, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Well, David Cameron, meanwhile, has acknowledged that the housing market just isn't working.
In an interview for East Midlands today, the Prime Minister said that in the future, local communities would have much more influence over housing plans.
From the Conservative conference in Manchester, here's our political editor, John Hess.
The Prime Minister gave me an expression from high finance to describe the new powers he's giving to local communities on future housing applications. He said he'd be giving them more skin in the game, in effect the confidence and clout to have a much bigger say. So we talked about housing, but first I asked him about the region's economy, and he gave me this assurance about the future of train building in Derby and the future of Bombardier.
Well, we are going to sort it out. We can't change the contract that Bombardier didn't win. The terms of that contract were set by the last government. We couldn't reopen those. But what we can do is look at future contracts, make sure that we can have a better way of doing things in this country, which we're going to do, but also looking hard, and I'm straining at the leash to do this, straining every sinew to do this, to make sure that Bombardier can benefit from future work for other projects, because there's a huge amount of investment going on in our country in the rail industry. We're building Crossrail, which is a 14 billion scheme, one of the biggest ones.
That's long term, surely.
No, but there may be things that, and I'm working hard on this at the moment, there may be other things where Bombardier can find work for its workforce to help our infrastructure.
Reviving a region's economy through house building, how do you combat the NIMBYism that can in turn lead to planning gridlock?
Well, first of all, the housing market isn't working at the moment. No one is building enough houses. The builders can't build. The lenders aren't lending, so the buyers can't buy. It's not working properly. So we say, bring back the right to buy, sell some of those council homes, use that money to build social housing, and at the same time give up government land and say to the housing industry, build those homes and pay us for the land later. Build now, pay later. That's what we're going to be doing. How do we avoid NIMBYism? Well, I think the key here is giving local communities more, if you like, skin in the game. We're saying to local communities, if those homes get built, you keep the council tax, you get a new homes bonus, and if factories are built in your local area, you will keep the business rates too. The way to get over NIMBYism is to give people an interest in sensible, sensitive, sustainable development going ahead.
House building is now at its lowest level since the 1920s. This Prime Minister certainly wants to build more homes, but he also wants local communities on side as to where those houses should be built.
John Hess in Manchester. Still to come.